The head of DHS acknowledges there are problems with the country's immigration system, but is pushing back on Republicans who want him out. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas testified Wednesday before the House Judiciary Committee. Republican lawmakers raised concerns about the number of people entering the country illegally, despite a sharp drop in border crossings in June. Here's some of what Mayorkas said.
Our approach to managing the borders securely and humanely, even within our fundamentally broken immigration system, is working.
It's been a busy week on the border. A federal judge blocked President Biden's asylum plan, and the Department of Justice also sued Texas for putting up floating barriers to stop migrants. For more, let's bring in CBS News immigration reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez. Camilo, first, why did the judge rule against President Biden's asylum plan?
Good evening, John. This is a significant loss in court for the Biden administration and its efforts to reduce illegal immigration along the U.S.-Mexico border. This regulation, first implemented in May, John, disqualifies migrants from U.S. asylum if they enter the country unlawfully after failing to seek legal protection in another country like Mexico on their way to American soil. And it is one of the reasons that Biden administration officials have cited for that recent drop that you mentioned in illegal border crossings. But this judge in California concluded that this regulation violates U.S. asylum law, that it is too restrictive because it penalizes migrants who cross in between ports of entry and who do not ask for asylum in other countries. He said that U.S. asylum law dating back to 1980 is very clear. Migrants physically on American soil, John, have a legal right to request asylum regardless of how they enter the country. The Justice Department has asked the judge to suspend this ruling while the appeals process plays out. It is now suspended for 14 weeks, and it is set to take effect again in 2 weeks.
Camilo, is it fair to interpret the judge's ruling as maintaining a norm, what used to be the norm of U.S. policy, or what still is the norm of U.S. law, which is that the United States is basically a welcoming country to those who have asylum claims? Because they're fleeing, if they have such claims, the basic proposition is that they're fleeing somewhere awful, and the United States has a more welcoming posture in law than it does in current politics.
Well, when Congress ratified the U.S. asylum program formally in 1980, it was trying to conform U.S. policy, John, with international treaties that were created in the wake of World War II to protect people fleeing persecution and to ensure that countries were not sending migrants and other refugees back to places where they could be persecuted, which is something that happened in World War II, including here in the U.S. The U.S. government rejected and famously hundreds and thousands of Jewish asylum seekers, many of whom were later killed as part of the Holocaust in Nazi-controlled Europe. So that's something that the Congress wanted to prevent. There has been a debate about whether that law, which is fairly generous, is now compatible with the reality of today's migration flows, John. But that is a debate that Congress obviously needs to have. The administration is arguing that in light of Congress not acting, it needs to place some higher conditions on asylum eligibility, John.
So while the judge is on the one hand saying President Biden's border policy is too restrictive and harsh, Republican lawmakers have accused the administration of being too lenient.
Yes.
On Wednesday, they mentioned the app used to process asylum seekers in Mexico. So let's play some of what they said.
And then you've taken this app and you've digitized illegal immigration and you've scaled it to the moon. Like this app that you've got everybody downloading is like the Disney Fast Pass into the country.
So, Camilo, remind us again about the app and the process that we're talking about here.
What the congressman from Florida is referring to, John, is an app known as CBP One, which the Biden administration has used since January to allow migrants currently in northern or central Mexico to request an appointment to be processed at a land port of entry along the U.S.-Mexico border. The administration has portrayed this process as an orderly and legal way for people to seek asylum and to discourage them from crossing in between the ports unlawfully. But Republicans have said that this process is artificially making it seem like the situation at the border has improved when the same number of people or a close enough number of people are still coming to the border, but now through the ports of entry. The administration would concede John, that this process is indeed designed to divert migration flows to the ports of entry. That is true. It is also true that this is now benefiting an unprecedented number of people. More than 38,000 migrants were processed as part of this app power system in June alone. That is an all-time high. But it is also true, John, that seeking asylum at a port of entry is entirely legal under U.S. law. And that's actually the policy that the Trump administration advocated for back when it was defending its policies. It was urging migrants to wait for a chance to be processed at a port of entry instead of crossing in between. So this is something that Republicans and Democrats have supported for years.
And finally, Camilo, what other legal challenges does the Biden administration face on the border front?
Well, it's safe to say that every pillar of the Biden administration's border strategy is facing legal challenges in court. The administration, on one side, is being sued by advocates for migrants who secured that favorable ruling against the asylum restriction, but it is also being sued by Republican-led states in several federal courts across the country. One of those lawsuits is against a program that allows up to 30,000 migrants from Cuba, Venezuela, Haiti, and Nicaragua to come to the U.S. legally if they have sponsors. That program is also designed to divert migration flows away from the border, and that program could very well be struck down because these states are arguing that it bypasses Congress's role in dictating legal immigration levels, John. They believe that it is Congress's role to dictate who gets to come here, not the administration's role.
And as we've discussed before, Congress is not always taking hold of that role. Camilo Montoya-Galvez in Washington, thanks a million.
Thanks, John.